Oh God, this is so messy. This is way too many white t-shirts, pants that I haven't worn, and that I never really wore. That's the pile of hangers. I have a lot of white t-shirts. You would have seen in the video I posted last week, or whenever you're watching this, I'm not sure when this video is going up, but I did a complete closet inventory because a lot of you on the Facebook group early on when that launched, it's called Lovelies Beauties. You guys can check it out. It's awesome. Everybody is so supportive and amazing. But in addition to that, you guys have a lot of amazing ideas, and somebody suggested saying that you did a complete closet inventory and actually counted how many items that you owned. A lot of you are minimalists, but a lot of you guys were like me where you had over 200 plus items. The inventory was basically also a declutter at the same time. And a lot of you guys wanted to know how I sell my clothes. So I figured I would go through this vlog and share with you how I sell things on Instagram stories and on Depop. So if you want to see how I sell my clothes so that they can get a new home and new life and new use, which they were meant to do, you want to see how I make sure that my clothes continue to be enjoyed, then I'll take you along with me on how I do that. So there's a lot of different ways that you can sell your clothing. Do whatever's easiest for you and whatever time allots for you. For me, I primarily like to do it through the website called Depop. This is not sponsored. I've been selling clothes on there for about 2 or 3 years now, so I've had a really good experience and it's really easy to use. Other ones that you can try are Poshmark. Carousel is another one in Canada. You can do Kijiji, Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace. You can take your clothes to a local consignment store. There's a lot of different ways that you can sell your clothes, or you can do a clothing swap too, which is another really great circular, sustainable option to get new clothes for yourself if you're missing pieces in your wardrobe, and to give your clothes new life in somebody else's closet. So choose whatever is easiest for you. A lot of people want to get this done really quickly, so I'd say that probably the fastest way to do it is to take it to your local consignment store. So consignment shops will buy your used clothes off of you, and you can either exchange back for a credit to shop at the store, or they will give you cash money. But just be aware that you probably won't get as much back on your clothing as you think. I think a lot of people get shocked about how much money they make back because you feel like you hold on to the value of your clothing, but clothing is like buying a car. It loses its value unless it's like something rare like a vintage Chanel or certain things like that. But a lot of clothing loses its value very quickly as soon as it leaves the store and the longer that you own it. So just be prepared that you're not going to get a huge amount of money back when you take your clothes into consignment. And the other thing to consider is a lot of consignment stores are looking for things that are seasonal. So if you are getting rid of a bunch of summer stuff and it's winter, they might not take your items. So just be aware of that, be aware of the season. You can consider holding on to your stuff if you want to do consignment if it's more seasonal. And so for me, I like to sell on Depop. It's basically like an Instagram feed for selling your clothing. So a couple of things to consider about Depop is that everything is done 100% through PayPal and through the app. Any insurance, any guarantees on the clothing, refunds, things like that are only guaranteed and defendable if it's done through the app. If you guys DM and decide, hey, we want to meet up and pay cash to save a little bit of fees on the PayPal or on the Depop fees, just be aware that your transaction is not protected. So Depop customer service won't be able to help you if you end up doing your selling privately. Another thing to be aware of is that Depop takes 10% of the total amount of the sale. So there's a couple of deductions that you'll see once you complete the transaction. So Depop takes 10% right off the bat, and then PayPal also takes a certain percentage of the total amount being sent to you because it is a business transaction. So just be aware of that as well, especially when you're pricing in your items and you're doing your shipping. And speaking of shipping, that is definitely the next thing to consider. In Canada, shipping costs are quite expensive, and a few options that you have in order to ship your clothing is Canada Post. That's what I use. You can use FedEx, UPS. There's a bunch of different couriers and shipment methods that you can choose. And once you figured out what website you're going to sell your clothing through and what service you're going to use for shipping, the next thing you got to figure out is how to take photos of your clothing and how to price them. Well, actually, The very first step in all of this is decluttering. So once you've got that out of the way, then you start dealing with that. So a couple of tips about taking photos of your clothing. If you're gonna do it over Instagram, Depop, wherever, there's a couple of things that you always want to consider. One, do you want to share photos and video of the item? Do you want to try on the piece and see how it wears on your body type? Just make sure that you're not wearing any crazy makeup and that you don't get the clothes dirty, but I do like to show what the item looks like on my body, either in video or photo, to help you give a real world sense of what the item actually looks like, how it moves, how it wears. So that's the first decision to make. Second tip is to make sure that you have good lighting. Whether you have artificial lighting or natural light is probably best. Make sure that the clothes are lit well and that you can see the details in them. If it's too dark or shadowy or grainy, or you're using your regular tungsten bedroom lighting, it all kind of disrupts. First of all, it looks bad, but it disrupts the true nature of what the piece looks like. I would avoid using excessive filters or any filters at all on your photos or on your video, just because they can tweak the color a little bit, the tones, the white balance, and can affect what the clothing looks like in real life. So that's just something to keep in mind. So I'll show you some examples of ways that people have taken photos of their clothing. Either they just have it hanging on a hanger and you can have plants and cute sort of background things, but remember that the focus of the photo is to display the clothing. If you're going to just have the clothing item hanging, make sure you use a nice hanger. They recommend a wooden hanger like this. Try not to use those like kind of cheap looking plasticky hangers. Try to approach your selling as if you are selling from an online store that you would shop from on an everyday basis anyway. Take visual cues and tips from your favorite online websites and see how they display the clothing. And then you can try that yourself. So the lighting in my place is really good right now. I'm doing what I have to. I'm standing on the bed. I'm making sure my feet are clean, but I'm just going to take some photos with my iPhone of the piece. And I like to take a full shot of the item, some detail shots, and I also like to take a photo of the tag to show off the brand and to show off the size of the item. And an important thing to remember is if there's slight damage in your clothing or if there's a stain, you want to be 100% transparent with any imperfections on the item, and you want to reflect that in your price, and you want to share what the imperfection is in your advertisement. So another thing I wanted to consider is sometimes on the iPhone, showing blacks and showing whites, items that are black and white, the exposure can be a little bit off, and it can make the blacks look really gray and the whites look really, really overexposed if you are taking a photo of your item and you expose for the actual black part of the piece in bright light. So you might have to play with your exposure and tap around to try to get the truest black and the truest white if your pieces are those colors. You also want to make sure that you're getting some nice detail shots of your pieces. So if there's texture in the fabric, if it's a specific brand and you want to share the tag, if there's cute details in the buttons, you want to capture all that, because Depop allows you to share multiple photos of the same item. So it just gives the person a little bit more information, a little more detail, just so they can take a closer look at the piece. And you also want to display what makes the piece unique and what makes it really special. So make sure that you capture those details. And another pro tip, make sure you steam your stuff. No one wants to buy wrinkly anything. Make sure you steam your clothing before taking photos of it. So another tip I have, especially for things like blazers and especially when they are so oversized, is to try to get the measurements on the item so that the person can get a sense of how big or how small an item is. So you want to do like the shoulder to shoulder measurement for blazers, the length up and down, the sleeve. Since jeans are so hard to buy, especially online, see, if I'm gonna sell these, I have to make note of that little red spot. Like, in addition to the size of the jeans, it's good to share things like the rise of the jeans, the inseam, what they're made of, in addition to the brand. So you can find that information on tags on the inside like this. And same goes for things like trousers, sweaters. If you can share in your description or in a photo just more information on the material, then that's really helpful. It helps the person decide, especially if they're particular about fabric or if they're allergic to wool, things like that. That's important to know for your buyer. And these are all things that I just learned over the years of selling, and just things that I noticed that were common questions from buyers. Basically, the more I do this, the more I find that it is very much like having a legitimate online store. Look at the adjectives and descriptors of items that you see on your favorite websites. Think of these types of words because those are all searchable terms that a lot of people are looking for. Vintage, oversized, menswear, distressed, and also just think about what you would be searching for if you were shopping for an item like this. So these are all things that you can consider in including in your description. It doesn't have to be a million years long, but it can be really quick and easy. The more information you provide to your buyer, the better and the easier the transaction will be to make. And it just makes you look professional and like you know what you're doing and that you are taking good care of your clothes and that you want to make sure that your clients are happy. Okay, so it's the next day. I have posted my ads for my closet sale on stories. Now I'm gonna be organizing everything into piles so I can keep track of what I sold and who it's going to. So this is how I am keeping track of everything that was sold. I'm keeping everything that was sold separate in its own pile. So this person bought a couple of things, 2 items here, and what I'm gonna do is put a post-it note with the name, the address, and the amount that the person sent me because I did everything through PayPal. It helps me keep track of everything and what is what in a little bit more of an organized fashion. So since I've sold everything, one thing I did not share with you guys yet is how to figure out your pricing. So this is something that is entirely up to you. You can decide how much you want to sell your clothes for. But for me, I tend to generally price them to sell. But there's a couple of tips that I would still consider when pricing your clothing. When you're buying secondhand clothing, the price asked is not always the price that you're going to get. So be open to negotiation, be open to accepting bundles, bartering, waiving shipping. If a person is willing to purchase a couple of extra items, definitely just be open if you have a willing buyer. See what they are willing to pay for the item and kind of go from there. I still always just try to keep it honest. So if a person is wanting to buy a couple of items off me, then I'll waive shipping, I'll charge a flat rate of shipping, things like that. It's just whatever you both are comfortable with in terms of what you want to let your items go for and what the person wants to pay. So one of the key rules of negotiation, this is still a business, is to price a little higher than you are expecting to make, because a lot of people will want to negotiate with you, and the price that you listed it for might not always be the price that you get at the end, but you still both want to be happy as the seller and as the buyer. So have a starting point, but be prepared to go down from there. If you want to get rid of your stuff quickly, just price it to sell. If I paid $100 for an item, I'm very likely not going to sell it for $95 or $90 when I price it to sell. This is now something that's pre-owned. I've worn it. Usually if I can make 40 to 50% back or higher on an item, I'm happy with that, because for me, that money, I'm not trying to make my money back here when I'm selling my clothing. I want someone to enjoy it, and I want someone to be happy with what they pay for it, and I want someone to be excited and happy when it arrives, and I want the transaction to feel like it was a positive thing for both of us. For me, selling clothes on Depop or on Instagram stories or Kijiji or wherever, to me it's just a little bit of extra money that I can pocket and put towards either my debt or a piece of camera equipment that I'm saving for. It's just another little side hustle to make a little bit of extra cash. For me, I'm not out thrifting and selling those pieces at a markup. I'm selling things from my own closet, so I do expect to take it at a loss. Now, I guess the next thing you want to do is find out what you're going to ship your items in. You can do an in-person meetup, you can meet up with people in public places, do whatever's comfortable for you, but right now I only really have time to ship things out. So if you're going to be shipping clothes regularly on a regular basis, it's a good idea to hold on to envelopes, bubble wrap envelopes, boxes that things come in. any extra packaging of things that might be coming into your place anyways. Just take the box apart, hold on to it, make sure you buy a roll of packing tape, and it's a good idea to get a weigh scale and have some measuring tape if you're going to be creating your own shipping labels, because that's all information you need to know. You need to know how much your item weighs, and you need to know the dimensions of the boxes or the envelopes that you are planning to ship your item in. So that's a really cheap and I think sustainable way of reusing old packaging. Some other things that I like to do is I like to hold on to old garment bags that I happen to get. I'll wrap the garment in a garment bag to make sure it's protected, or I'll just go to the dollar store and get some tissue paper to wrap the clothing in, and then I just make sure that the bag or envelope is nice and sealed before I send it out. And just wrap it with a little bit of love, send a love note, and ship it off for the person to enjoy. So I just packed up all the things I sold in my closet sale. It's all ready to go. I just used like old Amazon boxes. You can go to the dollar store and get some envelopes, whatever you have lying around. Try to reuse what you already have. That way it's a little more sustainable. And now we're gonna mail out the stuff. So now that we've shipped out our packages, the last thing I will always do if I got a tracking number along with the package is DM or send that person the tracking number so they can keep track and see when their package is coming to their door, and then they can get their new item and start to wear it and love it. So that's how I sell my clothes, you guys. This is how I try to get a little bit of extra money back from any of my previously loved items. Let me know if you've ever sold your clothing, if any of these tips helped you, and let me know any of your tips and tricks that you've done in the past when you've sold any of your items. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and please hit subscribe if you enjoyed it. I would love to see you back, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.